Right, welcome to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. It's Friday, and we're gonna dive into some cool shit. Um, Hope you guys been racking some nice backpack points for those who are registered on Backpack. If you haven't, you should really come check it out because things are just getting better and better at Backpack. I don't know what we're gonna get exactly for these points. I mean, a token most likely, and how much it's going to be worth. I'm not really sure, but I'm thinking that we could really get into like $1 per point region. So, um, and that's because Backpack's really been, they've been growing. There's a lot of lending going on, a lot of volumes. Last week saw almost 5 billion in volume. It's really cool, and they're listing a ton of new tokens on Perps and Spot. So things are looking really bright at Backpack. I'm really enjoying it. If you haven't checked it out, come and buy a MATLAB. If you register with my ref link, you're gonna get a lot of discount on fees, but nothing is gonna beat the immediate bump in fear teas. Whoa, that you're going to get from a MATLAB. A MATLAB is going to give you a bunch of discounts if you put it into your Backpack wallet. So, and I think for the price it's at currently, if we look at the chart, I also don't think, I think this is like an accumulation range, and it's going to break out as Backpack is growing. So a lot of reasons to come to Backpack. I'm going to dive into. I was thinking about going over a bunch of tweets, but you guys can do that in your own time. We should be talking about Bitcoin and just a general overview that I want to dive into. The other thing that I want to dive into is the possibility that the ETH strength versus Bitcoin is going to fade. So we'll come back to that. And then obviously I want to look at a few alts, but if the outperformance of ETH is gonna fade away, then obviously the main character should be Bitcoin. So let's digest a few things, right? So let's put it that way. Let me connect this here. The general larger trend that we're in is this one. We're on log scale. So let's just, connect a few lows here, and then we copy this line, and then you can see we had a little bit of a fake out here of this trend channel, but generally this is the trend channel that we're following, right? Acceleration would mean that we would have to go through this one connected to this one. For now, that's not anything that we should worry about, but we'll just, try and remember that one. If we go back in time, we can identify a bunch of places in the past where a simple retest of the fucking trend has been your friend. So let me unextend these. Obviously, the moments these kind of worked was when price really motored away from its previous breakout point. So previous high, big rally, a few candles that are, separated, and then the test, right? So in this example here, you don't really have it. There's not really, much ground gained above the high. So that suggests that this is like a pattern in itself. These two moves combined are a consolidation into something extremely steep. So this is probably what I would consider some kind of running flat. Other than that, retest, rally, right? Retest, rally. We can go back in time and find a few of these you just don't, you should just not overcomplicate these. That's kind of the message here. So if we look at Bitcoin, we've had one in, what was it again? April. And on the lower time frames, we're basically doing the same now here. Can that result in a lower retest of the region here? Absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to go there. I'm just saying that generally we tend to front run these retests, and even if they don't front run, they generally don't really go much below these levels. So if you're going to be waiting for 110K because you thought 112 wasn't enough, which is essentially you're saying, I want to wait 1.7% lower for a potential move. And I think that's what we're doing here, to the upper boundary of our trend line, right? So let's say FOMC is on the 15th and the 16th of September. So let's get that in here, which is essentially here. Then we can create a line there that says 190. I mean, we could hit 190. And obviously there's a lot of ground to be covered, but Bitcoin has been super, super, super stable and unvolatile. It's kind of like following this trend. It's in the lower half of it. Usually there is acceleration in a kind of like parabolic way once it comes off the trend line like that. And mind you, this is a log scale, so the straight channel is already parabolic, right, in linear. We're about to cross the halfway. We can try and mimic it like this. I don't know if this is like the half of it, but you kind of see how it reacts with that. It reacts with it here. It reacts with it here. It kind of battles it here. You're not really, but you get the point. And then it goes to the upper trend line. That's the larger trend line on the quote unquote short term that we're dealing with. Couple of weeks out, right? Maybe not September 15th, maybe a week earlier, maybe a week later. But generally, my expectation is that we're in this build-up phase, this like vertical accumulation. We're retesting an important level, and we're going to see continuation. And we're going to see basically what you get once you kind of cross the Rubicon of the middle of the channel. So let's see if I can find. Yeah, thank you. The other thing I'm noticing is that a bunch of people are getting extremely bearish and saying the top is in. There's absolutely no reason to believe so. One of my prediction models, price prediction models for tops that has been working for basically forever, is when we hit the red and we kind of, that's kind of the end of the rally. And it happened in 2013. It happened in 2017. It happened in 2021. It happened in 2013. Obviously, all the way back here, but I don't know. Here it's kind of didn't kind of hit it nearly. But the point is, if you want to look at where we are in the trend, every time this model crosses basically this line that we're currently at, like the 0.87, that's current price, we see parabolic phase. So 2013, these two rallies. And then in 2017, early 2017, and then in December 2020, and now we're crossing the Rubicon again. So, in my opinion, and now, notice how every time we kind of hit the 3-ish mark here, that's basically where price tops out. That's the end of the cycle. Obviously, prices went a little bit higher here, and then here, the same, and then here, the same as well. So, in terms of where we are, it reminds me of early 2017 in Bitcoin. And that, brings us to the point where I think this is going to start to get parabolic. It happened here. So, I don't know. Where does that put us? Well, ideally, we don't hit the red mark, because then I think it's over. Ideally, what happens is that price trades close to orange, which tends to be 193. I've been saying on Twitter that I think that we do hit 180K in September, which might even be a little bit on the low side considering how this is. But honestly, I would prefer not actually reaching orange and red yet, because it makes the rally a lot more sustainable. It allows time for Bitcoins to pass hands and, rotate holder bases, which is a very, positive thing. The other thing that's happening here is that the 401ks are getting access on a broader scale to Bitcoin, so and crypto in general. That's a mandate by Mr. Trump, and everyone's just gotten so bearish at support. I think the bottom is in, and then people are just finding excuses to make up stories about how price is going to go trade back to 110 or 109 or 106 or whatever. I don't think we've seen our macro event. I've been talking about the macro event that I expect, give or take a month, around August for, more than half a year. I think I first mentioned it in November, December. So the most logical expectation for me is that we go towards here, and then we have our event kind of erasing everything that we gained, or almost everything that we gained. So, let's just say ballpark 180. Maybe it's going to be less, maybe it's going to be more. And we retrace into the recent high, or maybe just not touch it. So essentially, let me grab this. So essentially, this is the previous all-time high. We're going to break it. We're going to go up here, and then we come crashing down in October. Maybe hit the bottom of the channel here. Maybe not even get there. Maybe go a little bit below it. Maybe this time actually do kind of pierce through the previous all-time high. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bang, and then come back down here. And it's funny because if you grab the 2017 fractal of this very same spot that we're in, it creates this exact copy of things. So let me explain what's going on in this chart. Essentially, this is the channel here that we drew on the other chart. And that's the, the parabolic eventual target. And this is unadjusted 2017 fractal. It's not modified to change the percentages. It's the exact fractal from back then at the same point in time according to this model. And it's essentially giving us the top of the trend channel here, and it's respecting the rules of the current lower degree cycle that we're in, trend channel, because you can draw these on all time frames. And this one is a higher degrees trend, and here we're setting up a lower degree trend into this exact time frame of the FOMC. And my thinking about a September or August event. So to me, this is starting to make a lot of sense. We're reclaiming. We had a little fake out on the trend line here. It's a reason for people to be bearish, to be shorting Bitcoin. And we're reclaiming it. Essentially, this is just not a bull flag. And then within that lower time frame, we're setting up another particular degree of trend, which also happens to coincide and project into the same area. So I'm feeling quite, there's a lot of things pointing into this direction that make a lot of sense to me. And the only thing that we basically had to do and then hope and wait and see if we actually get our, reward is buy the fucking dip on a retest of previous all-time high. And there's going to come more moments in this, in this giant bull run that we're in to execute this strategy. And now look how perfect that retest without any modification is of the previous all-time high. So if this happens, try and execute on it. I'm going to do it. I think there's quite a good reason to believe that this might actually happen. Long story short, if we're going to get to 170, 180K in, 5, 6, 7 weeks time, then obviously there is potential trouble in a bunch of other charts. Now let's grab ETH BTC, for example. And I'm going to have to excuse myself for all the squigglies that I didn't clean up, but you have to consider here, let me put this on log scale. I'm going to turn it back to linear, but it's kind of easier to read it. This is your first impulse, second impulse, third impulse. There is not a lot of gas left on this. We've been talking for weeks about how I expect the top to kind of get in around this red box. And as you see, we're in the red box. So whether you draw this on a logarithmic scale or not, I think starting at 0.035, there's some serious resistance, and we might go into 0.04, 0.042 if this really manages to extend. But the window to do this is kind of short. If Bitcoin is going to start roaring, I don't think that ETH BTC is going to be able to keep up. So essentially, some upside, and then as BTC goes, let me just remove this. As BTC goes, so we do have maybe like this, and then get into trouble as BTC starts roaring, and then we're going to come back and retest, I think, the bottom of these 2 wicks. So come back down here, right? That would make the most sense to me. The exact point where this is going to happen, I'm not really sure. That might be, might be like this. Does that give us a lot of room on ETHUSD? I think so. We're back above the monthly. I think that larger picture, this is still heading for like, you know, all-time highs above here. And that's probably where things are gonna get in trouble, like general trouble, like macro trouble, maybe. ETH BDC not performing so well. Probably have a really nice DAC head bounce on some of these alts as Bitcoin is starting to correct and then bounce. But the 4K resistance is a meme now, in my opinion. Like, if you're gonna short 4K, I wish you good luck. I don't think it makes sense to do it at all. And the other thing that's interesting to have a look at is ETH versus Solana, which is also maybe indicative of a little bit of a slowdown in ETH's performance. So essentially, yeah, that's fine. I think during this larger cycle, we're going to see, ETH remain outperforming Solana, simply because the narrative is constructed that way. We're seeing a lot of laws that are pro-decentralization and pro-trust in what Ethereum can offer the legacy financial system that's trying to upgrade into something cooler. And I think Solana is not ready to actually really do this, or the TradFi space isn't ready to actually take on the risk. They're gonna go with something that's proven itself to be stable, having outages, provably decentralized. But this level here that we've pointed out for weeks that we're getting into, like just above 5 in the ratio here, that is, we're probably gonna be moving around it for a little bit, right? Maybe see a bit of a correction and then see outperformance again. So, do I think that's reason to get in Solana? I don't know. I've been saying that I think Solana is kind of like mimicking the ETH fractal. Not sure. Let's see if we, yeah. Let me just open up a different chart here. I can do it like this. So let's open ETH BTC on there. Now look at that. I don't know, if you don't see the comparison, then I don't know what to tell you, but this looks very, very similar. And if BTC came all the way down here. So if Bitcoin is going to start roaring, I think Solana is just going to keep on losing value against Bitcoin. And then we'll need to figure out if ETH is still going to outperform or not. If ETH is still going to outperform, then the ratio between ETH and Solana is going to go absolutely crazy. Like, ETH is going to win a lot. I think once Solana versus Bitcoin gets back down here, there's obviously a period of time that it's going to wiggle around a little bit. And maybe by then, we're going to see the revival of the Solana arc. That could be, towards the end of the cycle. So big question about how ETH is going to do against Bitcoin. But either way, I think it will do well against Solana. And I would be patient. I might be completely wrong. And then you're probably going to be angry with me to tell you not to buy the generational bottom of Solana. But it's just not there, man. Like I don't think the trade is there yet. So might as well just stay patient. There's a bunch of ETH related coins that are going completely mayhem. Let's get back to the logarithmic scale. One thing I think there's, if ETH can hold up and start to consolidate a little bit versus Bitcoin, then there might be an opportunity for things like Aave and Link to run. Maybe some layer 2 tokens like ARB. I don't know. This, however, looks a very clean retest of this trend line. So it's overthrow to the downside, a reclaim retest. Basically what Bitcoin did. And generally, I find them very attractive setups. And then we target the above trend lines or the horizontal. So there's a lot of upside for Link. But as I said, if Bitcoin is really going to roar its head, this is probably going to consolidate or pull back a little bit more and a little bit longer until these alts get a little bit of a window. So I'm not really keen on kind of FOMOing in here. Same goes for Aave. If Aave had done this from this resistance here, then it would have been a different story. But this is probably going to bounce a little bit more until it actually starts doing another rip like it did in November 24. All right. I don't know. Filecoin. This is just gonna fuck around. Obviously, this is just gonna bounce somewhere around here. I don't know if I want to trade this. This is just a range. So, I mean, it's very, very easy how I approach this. It's a retest. Probably gonna bounce like it did every previous time. And then it's gonna break out on the upside eventually, especially if Bitcoin can do its thing. But sorry, probably a no-brainer. I'm not in at the moment, but I think this should easily be able to kind of do that. One thing that could happen is this. I would be gigantically bullish if this kind of breakdown and then reclaim happens. That's where I pile in a lot, especially if Bitcoin still looks great. Okay. This has been just taking a long time. Obviously, exchange coins are always great when market heats up again. And generally, when exchange coin starts to consolidate, that's a sign the broader market is going to consolidate. Most of that is attributable to the fact that essentially these protocols get valued because of revenue being made. So if you expect less revenue, you're going to sell your tokens and then buy back later until revenue picks up again. That's generally how it works. So still thinking that Bitcoin's going to start ripping up. This is going to be easy, like 60 plus, possibly more into September. So I think if my general thesis on Bitcoin is correct, then this is a no-brainer to maybe even get to like 70 or 80, maybe 100. So MicroStrategy remains beautiful. It's just waiting for its breakout, in my opinion. The double bottom into the liftoff that we spoke about happens every time. And then essentially every time before it breaks out, it has this, pullback. Let me go on log scale. So essentially here, here, and here. So that brings us to, oopsie. There we go. That gives us a target of, well, I would go with 700, but 1,000 is theoretically possible on this next leg. So that's where I'd be looking. Backpack added Doge, and I said I'd try, punt a little position. So that's what I did. On the daily, we did retest the support resistance level. Looks good, honestly. Some kind of like inverse head and shoulders forming here. So we're probably going to trade back to like 250 and then have some shenanigans. And if that works out, my method of measuring is usually taking the shoulders and then double that. So the 0.5 here at the high here. And that puts us nicely into this bearish block, right? So ding, 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 ding. No idea if that's gonna be help with Elon or something else, but Doge looks ready. It swiped the lows here, regained it, consolidating, obviously trying to prepare for a leg higher. That might be a trap eventually, but looks good for now. Everyone's been super bearish because some of bullshit BLS data, and I just think that equities are still on their way to 6,900, S&P 500 to 6,900. Every time we see a little bit pullback, everyone goes crazy. We're probably going to price in those rate cuts, and those rate cuts are probably not going to be super positive, but for now, we're going to price in the expected liquidity coming from that. The other thing is the reverse repo is almost at zero, which means that there is very little excess cash in the system left. So we're very much getting to the point where everything is max long, right? That in itself is a top signal. The question always is, how long can the market stay retarded? And it's probably longer than you can stay liquid, meaning that during this period where everything is max long, there's going to be a period where everything is, fucking max long. So being short when everyone's max long is a very tricky proposition, to say mildly. Timing to get out of this max long thing is difficult. Don't think we've reached that point. I think we can go into the FOMC before anything bad happens. So let me mark that out. Ching, 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 ching. I think it's like the 16th or the 15th. I'm not really sure. It's like the 2 days, but I don't know whether they set the rate on the first day or the second day. Probably the second day, after they talked a lot. So, magnet, donde es tú? See, my Spanish is getting super great. Bam. Flip the magnet. So yeah, gold is pretty cool. We spoke about this trend line in the last video and basically said if you rate it and find support and reclaim it, scenario of another leg higher becomes very most likely instead of like having the truncated fifth. This is now starting to look like some kind of ascending triangle consolidation with a leg higher. I spoke on Twitter about it when price was around like 370 or something, and then we kind of got that push. So anywhere below 3 to 40 is where I'm wrong. We can't go below the low here. Anywhere above it, I'm probably right, most likely. So let's go for this, the magnet strategy again. This is, yeah, I'm pretty, if general market's going to be bullish, if we are going to price in rate cuts, then gold's most likely going to anticipate before it happens. So there's that. So we're seeing a bit of recession being priced in, or whatever you want to call it, but this chart keeps bothering me because I really want to see, for markets to kind of not go completely lunatic, we need to kind of see this hold, because if we start losing the level here and we go here, that's, the world's going to be upside down. Basically, unrealized losses are going to be so big that I don't know if people, how easily they can be papered over. So that means that everyone who lends money out is very poor on top of inflation. That made them already poor. So not really. I'm kind of, let me put it this way. I'm happy that we're at, back at 115. And that market's actually responding to the upside to the recessionary quote unquote fears. But the economy is doing quite right. So, let's see what we get in September. XRP obviously is, the shit coin that keeps on going. We had a massively nice trade on it when we got out at 3,000. And I hope it's gonna just bounce around a little bit. I think once this starts pumping, it's probably signaling that the broader market is near exit liquidity. It's generally just a bunch of money that rotates from Bitcoin to XRP back to Bitcoin that I don't like seeing in the market. I mean, I like seeing it in the market, but it's a signal that we should keep an eye on. Other than that, I don't really have much to update. That's a pretty fucking long video, 38 minutes. My voice is shot. Hope you guys learned something. And if you did, come to Backpack. It's a fucking cool exchange. They have this big reward in points coming up for this hypothetical airdrop, which I think is going to be, quite large for people who scored a lot of points. I wouldn't be surprised if this total of mine is going to get me 6 figures in airdrop. And if you use my ref link, obviously I have to shill it, you're going to get a bunch of reductions in your fees on top of owning a MATLAB. You get 20% reduction in fees using my thing. You don't get it as you execute, but you get it paid back once a week in your as a referral payback fee. So come to Backpack, join now. Use my referral link. It's in the description of the video below. And I'll catch you guys next week. Cheers.